I was standing there when he said it. These new rules will finally get rid of deadweight. Brant. That was his name. My manager for the past 4 years. He was looking straight at me when those words came out of his mouth. Not a quick glance, not a subtle hint. Direct, intentional. Like he wanted to make sure I understood exactly who he was talking about. The room had about 15 people in it. Some from my floor, some from other departments. Every single one of them nodded. A few even had this small smile playing on their lips, like they were all in on some private joke and I was the punchline. I had been working at Crestline Industries for 11 years. 11. That is more than a decade of showing up early, staying late when things needed to get done, making sure everything we did was right, not just good enough. Right. Because in my role, if things went wrong, people could get hurt, not physically, but their lives could fall apart. Jobs lost, families struggling, all because someone decided to skip a step or ignore a rule that seemed inconvenient. I was the person who made sure we followed those rules. That was my job. Senior officer in the division that checked everything twice. The division nobody liked because we asked uncomfortable questions and said no when everyone else wanted to say yes. For 11 years, I thought that mattered. Brant kept talking. He had this way of speaking where every word sounded important, even when he was not saying anything meaningful. He was good at that, making people believe he knew what he was doing. Starting next month, we are implementing some changes. Nothing major, just updates to keep things running smoothly. He clicked something and words appeared on the wall behind him. Big white letters on a blue background. Mandatory additional hours, no extra payment, just part of the job now. Evaluation reviews every 14 days. Not the usual once or twice a year. Every 2 weeks, someone would sit you down and pick apart everything you did. Relocation requirement. If the higher-ups decided you were needed somewhere else, you had 1 week to pack up your entire life and move. No discussion, no negotiation. The list went on. I felt something twist in my chest. Not because I was surprised. I had seen this coming. But seeing it laid out like that, hearing Brant announce it with that satisfied tone, watching everyone else nod along like it all made perfect sense, all that hurt more than I expected. 3 months earlier, things had started changing. It began small. Brant stopped including me in certain conversations. Meetings I used to be part of suddenly happened without me. When I asked about it, he would say something vague. Oh, we handled it already. Or, nothing you needed to worry about. Then my coworkers started acting different. People I had worked with for years. We used to talk during breaks, share stories about our lives outside of work. Slowly, that stopped. They would lower their voices when I walked past, turn away when I looked their direction. It was not obvious enough to confront, but clear enough to feel. I told myself I was imagining it. Maybe I was being sensitive. Maybe I was tired. Then the promotion happened. Or rather, did not happen. There was an opening for a lead position in our division. I had been doing that work already for 2 years, training new people, handling the complicated situations, fixing problems nobody else wanted to touch. Everyone knew I was next in line. I knew I was next in line. They gave it to someone else. Derek. He had been there for 3 years. Nice enough guy, but he did not have the experience. He did not know the work the way I did. When the announcement was made, he could not even look at me. He knew it should have been mine. I asked Brant about it. Stayed calm, professional. Asked what I could do better next time. He leaned back in his seat and looked at me like I had asked something ridiculous. You are good at the work, sure, but you are not really a team player. Team player. That phrase made my skin feel hot. What do you mean? You push back too much. You make things difficult when they do not need to be. People are trying to get things done and you are always finding problems. I stared at him. That is literally my job. I am supposed to find problems before they become bigger problems. He shrugged. There is a way to do it without slowing everything down. What he really meant was, stop saying no. Stop pointing out when things were being done wrong. Stop making us uncomfortable. Because that was what had started all of this. About 5 months before that conversation, Brant and a few others had come to me with a proposal. They wanted to change how we processed certain approvals, cut some steps, speed things up. I read through what they wanted to do, and I knew immediately it would not work. Not legally. If anyone checked later, if anything went wrong, it would come back on all of us. Brant was annoyed, but he tried to push. Nobody is going to check. This is just to make things more efficient. Until someone does check. Then what? You worry too much. That is my job. He did not like that. None of them did. But they could not force me to approve it. So they went around me, found ways to do what they wanted, without needing my signature. And when I noticed and brought it up, I became the problem. Not the people breaking rules. Me, for noticing. That was when I stopped being part of the team. My name is Freya, by the way. I should have said that earlier. I am not good at talking about myself. Never have been. I always thought the work should speak for itself. Show up, do the job right, go home. That should be enough. It was not enough. So here I was, standing in this room, listening to Brandt announce rules that were clearly designed to push me out. Rules that would make my life so miserable I would quit on my own, or give them a reason to fire me. I looked around the room. Some people were staring at the words on the wall. Others were looking at their hands. A few were looking at me. Nobody said anything. Nobody asked if this was fair. Nobody questioned why these changes were suddenly necessary. Brandt finished his little speech. Any questions? Silence. He smiled. Great. We will start implementation on the 1st of next month. Let's make this transition smooth. People started gathering their things. The meeting was ending. I stayed where I was. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask how they could all just sit there and let this happen. I wanted to walk out and never come back. But I did not do any of that, because 3 months ago, something else had happened. Something Brandt did not know about. Something almost nobody knew about. The owners of Crestline Industries had been looking for people to serve on a special committee, national level. The group that reviewed and approved every major policy for the entire organization. Hiring, firing, transfers, pay structures, all of it. They wanted someone who actually understood how things worked, not just someone who knew how to play politics. They wanted someone who would read through proposals and catch problems before they became disasters. They asked me. It was meant to be quiet, no big announcement. They did not want people trying to use me to push their own agendas. So I said yes, signed the paperwork, and kept doing my regular job. Only a handful of people at the top knew. Brandt was not one of them. 2 months ago, his little group put together their proposal. The new rules, the changes that would let them get rid of me. They submitted it through the proper channels, thinking it would just get rubber stamped by whoever was in charge of that kind of thing. It came to me. I read every word. I saw exactly what they were trying to do, and I spent 3 days rewriting it. I kept the same structure, same titles, same official language, but I changed who it applied to. Every single rule now had one specific exception built into the wording. Does not apply to officers currently serving on the National Policy Committee. That was me, only me. I also made sure the rules could not be changed easily. Once approved, they would stay in place for at least 2 years. No appeals, no revisions unless there was a legal reason. Then I signed it, approved it, sent it back. They never read the final version. They just saw that their proposal had been accepted and celebrated. Now here we were. Brandt had just announced the rules that he thought would destroy me, and everyone in this room thought I was finished. I stood up. The room got quiet again. People turned to look at me. Brandt, I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Can I ask you something? He looked annoyed. Probably thought I was going to argue, complain, make a scene. What? Did anyone actually read who approved this? He blinked. What? You... I walked toward the front of the room. Slowly. I wanted everyone to see this. The approval signature. Did you look at it? He glanced at the projection on the wall, then back at me. It went through the proper process. That is all that matters. Show the signature page. That is not. Show it. Before we go any further, I just want to say thank you for listening. I know you have a lot of choices for what to spend your time on, and I appreciate you being here with me right now. If you are listening while working, while traveling, while doing anything at all, thank you. Let me know where you are listening from. I would love to know. Now, back to what happened in that room. Brandt looked uncomfortable, but someone else in the room clicked through to the last page, the signature page. There it was. My name. Clear as anything. That is my signature, I said. I approved this because it came through the National Policy Committee, which I serve on. The room was so quiet I could hear someone breathing too loudly. And if anyone had actually read the final version, you would have seen the exception clause. Let me read it for you. I read it out loud. Every word, slowly, making sure everyone understood. The rules applied to everyone. except officers on the National Policy Committee. Brant's face went from confused to pale in about 5 seconds. These rules take effect in 2 weeks, I continued, and according to the approval process, they cannot be changed for at least 2 years, unless there is a legal violation. I made sure of that. Someone dropped something, a pen maybe. It clattered on the floor, but nobody moved to pick it up. I looked at Brant, really looked at him. You wanted to get rid of dead weight. So did I. Then I walked out. The next 2 weeks were strange. People avoided me even more than before, but it was different now. Before, they avoided me because they thought I was weak, finished. Now they avoided me because they were scared. Brant did not speak to me at all. He would see me in the hallway and turn around, go a different direction. Once I saw him waiting for an elevator, and when the doors opened and he saw me inside, he just walked away, said he forgot something, took the stairs instead. Derek, the one who got my promotion, came to my workspace 3 days after the meeting. He stood there for a while before saying anything. I did not know, he finally said. I looked up from what I was working on. Did not know what? About the committee, about what they were trying to do. I believed him. Derek was not smart enough to be part of Brant's planning. He just benefited from it. Okay, I said. I am sorry. For what? Taking the promotion? You did not turn it down. Nobody would. He shifted his weight. Uncomfortable. Are you going to, with the new rules, am I going to come after you? I finished for him. No, you did not create this mess. You just accepted what was offered. He nodded, relieved. Then he left. But the others, the ones who had been part of Brant's little group, they were panicking. There were 5 of them total. Brant, obviously. Then Simone, who worked in operations. Keith, from finance. Lori, who handled client relations. And Todd, another manager from a different floor. They had all been in on it. All of them had pushed for the new rules, thinking it would clear me out and make their lives easier. No more someone asking difficult questions. No more someone slowing down their shortcuts. Now those same rules were about to apply to them. The mandatory additional hours hit first. Simone was the first one to crack. She had 2 kids, young ones. Her whole life was built around leaving at exactly 5 every day to pick them up from the place that watched them after school. The new rules meant she had to stay at least 3 extra hours, 4 days a week. She tried to find a workaround, asked if she could come in earlier instead. Work from home, anything. The rules said no. Additional hours had to be on-site, end of day. No exceptions, except for me. I watched her get more and more exhausted. She started showing up looking like she had not slept. Her work got sloppy. She forgot things, missed deadlines. After 2 weeks, she quit. Just walked in one morning and said she was done, could not do it anymore. 4 left. Keith was next. The evaluation reviews every 14 days destroyed him. See, Keith was the kind of person who looked good on paper but did not actually do much. He was great at talking in meetings, making it sound like he was busy and important. But when you actually looked at what he produced, it was thin, surface level. The reviews exposed that. Every 2 weeks, someone sat down with him and went through everything he was supposed to have done. Every 2 weeks, the list of problems got longer. He tried to argue, said the reviews were too frequent, too harsh. He appealed to Brant, who could not do anything because the rules were locked in. He went above Brant, but everyone higher up just shrugged. The rules were approved, properly signed off on. Nothing to be done. After 6 reviews, Keith was put on a performance plan. That is the step before getting fired. He saw where it was going and found another job. Gone within a month. 3 left. Lori and Todd both got hit with the relocation requirement at the same time. Different locations, but same situation. The higher-ups decided they were needed elsewhere. 4 hours away for Lori, 5 for Todd. They each had 1 week to decide. Lori had just bought a house. 6 months earlier, she and her husband had saved for years, finally found a place they loved, moved in. Now she was supposed to pack up and move, or lose her job. She tried to fight it, said it was unreasonable, unfair, but the rules were clear. The organization could relocate anyone if there was a business need, and there was always a business need if someone wanted there to be one. Her husband could not just pick up and leave. He had his own job, his own life. They fought about it. I did not hear the fights, but I heard about them, from people who still talk to people who talk to her. In the end, She took a demotion at a different organization. Something local, less pay, less responsibility, but at least she could stay in her house. Two left. Todd actually took the relocation, moved to the other city, left his whole life behind. He lasted 3 months before he could not take it anymore. Being away from his family, living somewhere he did not know anyone, doing the same work but now completely isolated. He came back and took a lower position somewhere else. Anywhere else. One left, Brant. He held on longer than I thought he would. Maybe because he was too proud to quit. Maybe because he thought he could still find a way out. He could not. The additional hours wore him down. He was used to leaving early, playing games on his phone, taking long breaks. Now he had to actually be present, actually working. It killed him. The reviews were worse. Turned out, when you actually examined what Brant did all day, it was not much. He was good at delegating, good at taking credit for what other people did. But his own work? Barely anything. Every 2 weeks, someone tore apart his performance. Every 2 weeks, he had less and less to hide behind. I did not go out of my way to watch him fall apart, but I saw it anyway. Everyone did. He started looking tired, then angry, then just defeated. 3 months after the rules took effect, Brant was put on a performance plan. Just like Keith had been, he knew what that meant. He quit a week later, took a job somewhere else. I heard it was a step down, less authority, less pay, but at least he was out. I did not feel victorious. I did not celebrate. I just kept doing my work. People started treating me differently again, not with pity or contempt this time, with caution, respect, maybe, or fear. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. New people came in to replace the ones who left. They did not know the whole story, just pieces, rumors. Someone told them I was the person who approved policies. Someone else told them not to cross me. They kept their distance. Derek, the one with my old promotion, started asking me questions again. Work stuff, things he did not know how to handle. I helped him, not because I liked him, but because the work mattered more than my feelings. 6 months after everything fell apart, the owners called me in for a meeting. I thought maybe I was in trouble. Maybe I had pushed too hard, used my position in a way they did not approve of. I was wrong. They wanted to expand my role, give me more authority on the national committee. They said I had good judgment, that I understood how to protect the organization without playing politics. I said yes. A year after the meeting where Brant announced the rules, I was asked to take over his old position, his job, the one he had used to make my life miserable. I almost said no. I did not want to be a manager. I did not want to deal with people and politics and all the things that came with that kind of role. But then I thought about who they might bring in instead. Someone like Brant, maybe. Someone who would cut corners and punish anyone who questioned them. So I said yes. The day I started, I called a meeting. Everyone from the division. Same room where Brant had announced the rules. I stood at the front and looked at all of them. Some I knew, some were new. I am not going to give you some speech about how things are going to be different now, I said. I am just going to tell you what I expect. Do your work. Do it right. If you do not know how to do something, ask. If you see a problem, say something. If you make a mistake, own it and fix it. I paused. Let that sink in. I do not care if you like me. I do not care if we become friends. I care that when someone looks at what we do here, they see work that was done right. That is it. Someone raised their hand. Young guy. I did not know his name yet. What happens if we disagree with you? He asked. Good question. Then you tell me. Bring me your reasons. Show me why you think I am wrong. If you are right, I will listen. If you are wrong, I will explain why. But you do not go around me. You do not hide things. You come to me directly. He nodded. Anything else? Nobody said anything. Good. Get back to work. They filed out. Slowly, quietly. I stayed in that room for a few minutes after everyone left. Looked at the space where Brant had stood when he announced the rules he thought would end me. Where I had stood when I told him the truth. It felt different now. Not better. Exactly. Just different. I was not the same person I had been a year ago. That version of me thought if you just did good work, people would see it and value it. Thought fairness mattered. I knew better now. Fairness was something you had to fight for. And sometimes fighting meant being smarter than the people trying to hurt you, meant using their own weapons against them. I did not feel good about what I had done. but I did not feel bad either. They had tried to destroy me. I just made sure I survived. The first month as manager was harder than I expected. Not because of the work itself. I knew the work. I had been doing half of it already for years, while Brant took credit. It was the people that were hard. Some of them were waiting for me to fail. I could see it in how they watched me, waiting for a mistake, waiting to say, "I told you so," even though they had never said anything out loud. Others were too eager to please. They would agree with everything I said, even when I was clearly asking for their opinion. That was almost worse than the ones who wanted me to fail. At least the doubters were honest about it. There was one person who was different. Her name was Ingrid. She had been hired about 8 months before all the chaos with Brant started. Quiet, kept to herself, did her work, and went home. She came to my workspace about 3 weeks after I took over. "You have a minute?" she asked. "Sure." She sat down, did not waste time with small talk. The process for approving vendor contracts. It does not make sense. I leaned back. "Explain." "We are double-checking things that have already been verified. Then we send it to another department that checks the same things again. It takes twice as long as it needs to, and nobody catches anything new because we are all looking at the same information." She was right. I had noticed the same thing years ago, mentioned it to Brant once. He told me if it was not broken, do not fix it, even though it was broken, just not in a way that affected him personally. "What would you change?" I asked. She had a whole plan, thought it through, tested it on a few smaller contracts to see if it worked. It did. "Do it," I said. She blinked. "Just like that? You saw a problem. You found a solution. You tested it. What else do you need from me?" I thought I would have to submit a proposal, get approval from multiple people, wait months. "You just got approval. If it goes wrong, we will fix it. If it works, we will roll it out to everything else." She left looking confused. But 3 weeks later, her new process was cutting approval time in half. No mistakes, no problems, just faster and cleaner. Word got around. Other people started coming to me with ideas. Small things at first. Changes to how we organized information. Better ways to communicate between departments. I said yes to the ones that made sense. No to the ones that did not. Either way, I explained why. Slowly, things started to shift. People stopped waiting for permission to think. They started bringing solutions instead of just complaints. Work got done faster, better, but not everyone was happy about it. There was a manager on a different floor, Graham. He had been there longer than me, longer than almost anyone. He did not like that I had been promoted, did not like that people were listening to me. He started pushing back on things, small things, questioning decisions I made, telling people in his department to ignore new processes I put in place. I let it go for a while, figured he would get tired of fighting over nothing. He did not. It came to a head during a meeting with several department heads. We were discussing how to handle a situation with a client who was upset about delays. I explained what had caused the delay and what we were doing to fix it. Graham interrupted. "Maybe if certain people focused more on their actual job instead of trying to change everything, we would not have these problems." The room went quiet. I looked at him. "You think the delay was caused by process changes?" "I think people are distracted. The delay was caused by a vendor missing a deadline. That has nothing to do with internal processes. Still, maybe if you spent less time playing around with how we do things and more time making sure the basics get done." Playing around, like improving how we worked, was some kind of hobby. I could have argued, could have pointed out all the ways the changes had actually made things better, could have embarrassed him in front of everyone. Instead, I said, "You might be right." He looked surprised. "Tell you what," I continued. "For the next month, your department does not have to follow any of the new processes. Keep doing everything exactly how you were doing it before. We will compare results at the end and see which way works better." He was not expecting that. He thought I would fight him, get defensive. "Fine," he said. "Good." The meeting moved on. 4 weeks later, the numbers were clear. My departments had processed 30% more work with fewer errors. Graham's department was exactly where they had always been. Same speed, same mistake rate. Nothing better, nothing worse. I did not make a big announcement about it, just sent the data to the people who needed to see it, let them draw their own conclusions. Graham never challenged me again, did not apologize either, just stopped pushing back. That was fine with me. I did not need an apology. I just needed him to stop getting in the way. Months passed, then a year, then two. The rules that I had rewritten, the ones that pushed out Brant and his group, eventually expired. I could have extended them, could have made them permanent. I removed them instead. Not because I felt sorry for anyone, but because I did not need them anymore. The people who were left were either good at their jobs or smart enough not to come after me. Besides, I did not want to lead through fear. I had seen what that looked like with Brant. People doing the minimum, hiding mistakes, playing politics instead of working. I wanted people who actually cared about doing things right, and you do not get that by threatening them. Around the 3-year mark, something unexpected happened. The owners called me in again. Same meeting room as before, but this time there were more people. I recognized some of them from the national committee, others I had never seen. They offered me a position at the top level, one step below the owners themselves, overseeing multiple regions, responsible for thousands of people, instead of just my division. I asked for time to think about it. That night, I sat in my apartment and really considered it. This was everything I was supposed to want. More authority, more pay, more respect. But I thought about what it would actually mean. More meetings, more politics, more time spent managing people who were managing people, instead of actually doing the work. I thought about why I started this job in the first place. 11 years ago, I wanted to make sure things were done right, that rules existed for a reason, and people followed them. Not because I liked rules, but because when they were ignored, real people got hurt. If I took this new position, I would be further away from that. I would become the kind of person who approved things without really knowing what they were, who trusted other people to handle the details. I would become the kind of person I had spent years fighting against. The next day, I told them no. They were surprised, asked if I was sure, told me the opportunity might not come around again. I was sure. Instead, I asked for something different. I wanted to stay in my current role but have the authority to audit any department, any region, anytime I thought something was wrong. I wanted the ability to stop processes that were cutting corners, to hold people accountable when they tried to hide problems. They agreed. So that is what I did. For the next 2 years, I became the person everyone was a little afraid of. Not because I was cruel, but because if you were doing something wrong, I would find out, and there would be consequences. I caught managers falsifying reports, departments ignoring safety requirements, people taking credit for work they did not do. Every time, I documented everything, gave people a chance to explain, and when they could not, I made sure the right people knew about it. Some people hated me for it, called me harsh, unreasonable, said I was on a power trip. Maybe they were right. Maybe I had become too hard, too unforgiving. But I also saved jobs, caught problems before they became disasters, made sure people who actually did good work got recognized instead of pushed aside. 5 years after Brant announced those rules in that meeting, I was still there, still doing the work. Most of the people from that day were gone. Some quit, some retired, some moved on to other things. New people came in. They did not know the whole story, just pieces. They knew I had been there a long time, that I had worked my way up, that people respected me, even if they did not always like me. One of the new hires asked me once, during a training session, how I had lasted so long. I thought about it, really thought about what to say. I did not try to be likable, I finally told her. I tried to be right, and when people tried to push me out, I made sure I was too valuable to lose. She nodded, like that made sense. But later, alone, I thought about that answer, wondered if it was really true. The truth was messier. I lasted because I got lucky, because I happened to be on that committee, because Brant was stupid enough not to read what he was approving. If any of those things had been different, I would have been the one pushed out. I would have quit or been fired, and nobody would have cared. That is the part that still bothers me sometimes. How close it came, how easily it could have gone the other way. But it did not. I survived, and I made sure the people who tried to destroy me paid for it. Was that revenge? Maybe. I never thought of it that way at the time. I thought of it as justice, as protecting myself. Now, looking back, I am not sure there is a difference. I am still at Crestline Industries, still in the same building, though my workspace is different now, bigger, with a window. Sometimes I walk past the meeting room where it all happened, where Brant stood and announced those rules, where I stood up and changed everything. It looks the same. Same projection on the wall. Same chairs arranged in rows. But it feels different. Like a place where something important happened. Even though most people who use it now have no idea, I am not the same person I was that day. I am harder, more careful, less willing to trust that doing good work is enough. But I am still here, still making sure things are done right, still asking the questions nobody wants to hear. And nobody, not once in the 5 years since that meeting, has tried to push me out again. They know better now. Before I finish, I want to say thank you for sticking with me through this whole story. I know it was long. I know it was not always easy to hear. But if you made it this far, that means something. If this story meant something to you, if it made you think or feel or remember something from your own life, I would love to hear about it. Leave a comment. Tell me what you thought. And if you want to hear more stories like this, hit that like button. Subscribe, because there are more stories to tell, more truths that need to be heard. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Now go do whatever you need to do next. And remember, sometimes the best way to win is just to be smarter than the people trying to beat you. Bonuses are discretionary, and I've decided to reward the people who've contributed most to the company's growth. My son took on significant management responsibilities this year. My daughter streamlined our operations. That's leadership. I was still standing there with my hand raised. 50 people in that meeting, and every single one of them found something fascinating to look at that wasn't me. Phones, papers, the water stain on the ceiling tile, anything. I'd asked a simple question. So when do the rest of us get our bonuses? My boss had just announced record profits of $3.2 million. Everyone had cheered. Then he'd announced his son got $180,000. His daughter got $160,000. The rest of us got a speech about teamwork and how proud he was of everyone's hard work. I lowered my hand. My face felt hot, but I kept my expression flat because I'd learned a long time ago that showing emotion at work was the same as losing. He didn't even look at me when he dismissed the meeting, just gathered his papers and walked out. People started moving, talking in low voices, avoiding my eyes. I sat there, 10 minutes, 15. The room emptied. I stayed. I kept thinking about the manufacturing account I'd closed in April, the retail chain in June, the consulting firm in September that brought in $800,000 alone. I'd worked nights, weekends. I'd missed my sister's wedding because he'd called me 2 days before and said we needed to fly out for an emergency pitch meeting. This is big, he'd said. This is your chance to prove yourself. I'd proven myself over and over. And his son had gotten $180,000 for management responsibilities. I'd met his son twice. The first time, he'd asked me if I was the new person from accounting. The second time, he'd forgotten my name entirely and called me, "Hey, you." His daughter worked 3 days a week. I knew this because I worked 5 and sometimes 6 and 7, and I'd see her coming in late on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, always carrying a smoothie, always looking at her phone. Last month, she'd spent 3 weeks rearranging the break room furniture and painting one wall pale green. That was apparently what streamlining operations meant. Before I tell you what happened next, thank you for staying with me through this. I need to say this out loud to someone who'll actually listen. Tell me where you're listening from right now. I want to know I'm not alone in this. My name is Corinne. I'm 31. People usually remember me because I have this habit of taking notes on everything. Always have a notebook with me. Always writing things down. My mom used to say I was born watching, born noticing things other people missed. I don't know if that's true, but I do know I've never been the loudest person in a room. I've never been the most charming. What I am is thorough, patient, and once I decide something matters, I don't let it go. I grew up in a town where nobody talked about ambition like it was a good thing. My mom worked 3 jobs to keep us fed after my dad left. She cleaned houses in the morning, worked retail in the afternoon, did bookkeeping for a small accounting office at night. I watched her leave before dawn and come home after I was supposed to be asleep. I watched her hands crack and bleed in winter. I watched her smile anyway, tell me and my sister that things were going to get better. When I was 16, I asked her why she never complained. She looked at me for a long time before she answered. Complaining doesn't change anything. Working does. I believed her. Maybe that was my first mistake. I put myself through college, scholarships, loans, working campus jobs that paid minimum wage. I studied marketing because I was good at understanding what people wanted before they knew they wanted it. I graduated with honors and a debt that felt like it was crushing my chest every time I thought about it. I worked 2 jobs after graduation, one at an advertising agency, where they paid me almost nothing and expected everything. One at a restaurant where I smiled at customers who snapped their fingers at me and left 10% tips. I did that for 2 years, saved every dollar I could, paid down the debt slowly, painfully. Then I met him at a networking event. My boss. He was standing by the bar, talking to 3 other men in expensive suits, and something about the way he held himself made me think he was someone worth knowing. I didn't approach him. I listened. He was talking about his business, how he'd built it from nothing, how he needed people who were hungry, who understood that loyalty and hard work meant something. When he went to get another drink, I was standing next to him. "You said you need people who are hungry," I said. "I'm hungry." He looked at me, really looked. "Tell me why I should hire you." I didn't give him a pitch. I asked him questions about his business, what his biggest challenge was, where he saw growth potential, what kept him awake at night. He talked for 20 minutes. When he finished, I told him 3 things he could do differently. Specific things. Concrete. He wrote them down on a napkin. 2 weeks later, he called me, offered me a job. The salary was less than I'd hoped for, but more than I'd been making. He said, "Prove yourself here, and you'll go far. I reward people who deliver." I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. The first year, I worked harder than I'd ever worked in my life. I learned the industry. I learned the clients. I learned how to read a room, how to know when someone was ready to say yes, how to close a deal without making it feel like pressure. I brought in my first major client in month 7, a small manufacturing company that needed help repositioning their brand. I spent weeks on that pitch. When they signed, my boss took me out to lunch. He said, "This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is what leadership looks like." I thought that meant something. Year 2, I brought in 4 more clients. Year 3, 6. Year 4, the year that ended with that meeting, I'd brought in 11. 11 major accounts. I knew the exact numbers because I kept track of everything. Every pitch, every meeting, every late night and early morning. I documented it all in my notebooks because some part of me, even then, knew I might need proof someday. His children had started working at the business during year 3. His daughter first, then his son 6 months later. The announcement came in an email. Thrilled to welcome my daughter to the operations team and my son to business development. Family is everything, and I'm proud to build something we can pass down. I didn't think much of it at first. Rich kids working for their parents was normal. I figured they'd do whatever they did, and I'd keep doing what I did. But then I started noticing how he talked about them in meetings, how he'd mention his daughter's ideas even when she hadn't said anything, how he'd credit his son with insights that had come from me or from others on the team. And when I'd see them in the office, they'd be on their phones, talking about weekend plans, leaving early. I told myself it didn't matter. I wasn't there to judge them. I was there to work. The meeting where everything broke happened on a Thursday, November. The weather had turned cold, and everyone was already thinking about holidays. He'd sent a message the day before saying we were having an all-staff meeting to discuss end-of-year performance. I thought maybe, finally, he'd acknowledge what I'd done. What we'd all done. When he said $3.2 million profits, people clapped. We'd never hit numbers like that before. Then he started talking about bonuses, and I felt something in my chest lift. This was it. His son's name, $180,000. His daughter's name, $160,000. Then silence. He smiled at the rest of us and said, "I know this has been a challenging year for everyone. Your hard work hasn't gone unnoticed. Let's keep this momentum going into next year." That was when I raised my hand. That was when I asked my question. That was when everything I'd believed about hard work and fairness and earning your place shattered into pieces so small I'd never be able to put them back together. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word. The way he'd said discretionary, the way he'd called giving his children hundreds of thousands of dollars, rewarding contribution, the way 50 people had looked away from me like I was, embarrassing myself just by asking. I got up at 4 in the morning and opened my laptop. I pulled up my records. Every client I'd brought in over 4 years, every contract, every dollar amount. I made a spreadsheet. By the time the sun came up, I had numbers that told a story nobody wanted to hear. Out of the $3.2 million in profits, my work had generated $2.1 million, almost two-thirds, and I'd gotten a salary that was exactly average for my position, nothing more. I thought about quitting. I typed up a resignation letter, deleted it, typed another one, deleted that too. Because here's what I knew that other people didn't. My boss had connections everywhere in our industry. I'd seen what he did to people who left. There was a woman named Bridget who'd worked there before I started. She'd quit to take a job at a competitor. He'd called her new employer before her start date. Just wanted to give you some context on Bridget, he'd said, his voice warm and concerned. Wonderful person, but she struggled with deadlines, had some issues with accuracy in her client reports. I'm sure she'll do fine with the right supervision. None of it was true, but her new job offer got quietly rescinded. She ended up leaving the industry entirely. I'd watched him make calls like that 3 times in 4 years. Always smiling, always friendly, always destroying someone's next opportunity while pretending to be helpful. So I didn't quit. I went to work the next day, and the day after that, I asked for a meeting with him that Friday. Professional, calm. I'd practiced what I was going to say. I had my numbers ready. He was typing when I walked in, didn't look up. I wanted to talk about compensation, I said. You're well compensated for your role. He still didn't look up. If you're unhappy, you're free to explore other options. That was it. That was the entire conversation. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds, waiting for him to at least meet my eyes. He didn't. I left his office and went to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, pressed my palms against my eyes until I saw stars, because crying at work was not something I was going to do. Not for him, not for anyone. When I came out, I washed my hands for a long time, looked at myself in the mirror, my mom's voice in my head, complaining doesn't change anything. Working does. But I'd been working. I'd been working harder than anyone, and it hadn't mattered. So I decided to stop working so hard. Not quit, just stop going above and beyond. Do exactly what my job description required. Clock in, clock out, no more nights, no more weekends, no more missed family events. And I decided to watch, really watch. I started paying attention to everything, how he operated, who he talked to, what he said about himself, versus what was actually true. I'd always been good at noticing things, but now I noticed everything. I watched how he talked about his children at client dinners. We had one a week after my failed meeting with him, a potential account worth maybe $400,000. He spent 20 minutes telling the clients about his son's business degree, his daughter's instincts. They're the future of this company, he said. I'm building something that'll last generations. The client smiled politely. One of them asked his daughter a question about the services we offered. She looked at me. I answered. She nodded along like she'd been about to say the same thing. I watched how he retold stories. A pitch I'd developed for a tech startup became, in his version, something he'd come up with over breakfast. I told them we could cut their costs by 30%, he'd say to anyone who'd listen. I'd spent 2 weeks analyzing their operations to come up with that number. He'd glanced at my presentation for maybe 5 minutes before the meeting. His children didn't seem to notice, or maybe they did and didn't care. They smiled when he praised them, accepted the credit, never questioned whether they'd actually earned it. But I started noticing cracks. His daughter would sometimes get this look on her face when he talked about her accomplishments, something between pride and discomfort. She'd glance at other people in the room, like she was checking to see if they believed him. His son would go quiet when clients asked him detailed questions. He'd defer to his father, or to me. Once, after a meeting, I heard him on the phone with someone. I don't know, man. Sometimes I feel like I'm just here, like I'm not actually doing anything real. They weren't stupid. They were just living inside a story their father had written for them, and they didn't know how to step out of it. 3 months after the bonus meeting, his daughter found me in the break room. I was making coffee. She was holding her phone like she'd been working up courage to approach me. Hey, she said, can I ask you something? Sure. How do you do it? The client work. How do you know what to say? I looked at her. Really looked. She was 26, dressed in clothes that cost more than my rent, and she looked lost. You want to grab lunch? I asked. We went to a small cafe 2 blocks away. She ordered a salad she barely touched. I ordered soup. We talked for 2 hours. She asked me about pitches, about client relationships, about how you build trust with someone who doesn't know you. I answered honestly, didn't simplify it or make it sound easy. Told her about the failures I'd had early on, the times I'd read a room wrong, the deals I'd lost. Do you ever feel like people don't take you seriously? She asked. Every day, but you keep going anyway. What else am I going to do? She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, sometimes I wonder if I've ever actually accomplished anything. Like, anything that's mine. Does that make sense? It made perfect sense. I didn't say that. I just nodded. We started meeting once a week. I didn't plan it. She'd text me, ask if I had time for coffee. I'd say yes. We'd talk about work, about projects she wanted to try, about ideas she had. Some of them were good. I told her which ones and why. Some of them needed work. I told her that too. I never said anything negative about her father. I didn't need to. I just showed her what real work looked like, what it felt like to build something yourself, to earn respect instead of having it handed to you. 6 weeks later, her brother called me. My sister said you've been helping her understand the business. Could we talk sometime? We met at a coffee shop near his apartment. He was quieter than his sister, more uncertain. He told me he'd always felt like he was disappointing their father by not being better at the work, but he didn't know how to get better when everything he tried got dismissed or corrected. He tells people I'm in business development, he said. I don't even know what that means. I just show up and sit in meetings and try not to say anything wrong. I asked him what he actually wanted to do, not what his father wanted, what he wanted. He didn't have an answer. Nobody had ever asked him that before. I started meeting with both of them, separately, always off-site, coffee shops, a park near the office, once at a bookstore where his daughter wanted recommendations on leadership. I never badmouthed their father, never told them they were unqualified or lazy. I just asked questions, made them think, introduced them to people who could mentor them in real ways, not the hollow kind their father practiced. His daughter started asking him detailed questions about deals, who'd actually closed them, who'd done the groundwork. He'd get irritated when she pressed. Why does it matter? The deal got done. She'd notice the irritation, notice what he wasn't saying. His son started working longer hours, trying to prove himself, coming in early, staying late, but their father kept taking credit for his ideas, the same way he'd taken credit for mine. The son started to see the pattern, started to understand what I'd been living with for 4 years. I didn't tell them what to do. I just helped them see, clearly, and I watched their father. Watched him get more comfortable, more certain that his legacy was secure, that his children would take over someday and carry on everything he'd built, that his name would mean something long after he was gone. He had no idea what was coming. The months passed. Winter turned to spring. I kept doing my job, just my job, nothing extra. When clients called after hours, I let it go to voicemail and responded during business hours. When my boss asked me to work a weekend, I said I had plans. His face would tighten, but he couldn't say anything. I wasn't refusing to work. I was just refusing to be used. Other people in the office started noticing. A woman named Felicity, who'd been there 6 years, started leaving at 5:30 instead of 7. A man named Gene stopped answering emails on Sundays. It was like everyone had been waiting for permission to have boundaries, and watching me set them gave them that permission. My boss didn't like it. He'd make comments in meetings. Remember when this team was hungry? When people wanted to win? He'd look at me when he said it. I'd look right back, my face neutral. His daughter kept meeting with me. By April, she was talking about things she'd never said out loud before. How she'd never chosen to work for her father. How he'd just assumed. How she'd gone along with it because saying no felt impossible. What would you do if you could do anything? I asked her one afternoon. We were sitting on a bench outside a library. Spring sun. People walking past with dogs and coffee. She was quiet for a long time. I think I'd want to help people. Like, actually help them. Not sell them things or manage their brands. Something that matters. What's stopping you? My father would never understand. Does he need to? She looked at me like I'd said something in a foreign language. His son was changing too. He'd started volunteering at a youth center on weekends, helping kids with college applications. He'd mentioned it casually one day when we met for coffee. It's the first thing I've done that feels real, he said. Like, I'm actually useful. You thinking about doing more of it? I don't know. Maybe. My dad would lose it if I left the business. Whose life is it? He didn't answer, but I could see him thinking. By summer, both of them were asking different questions, not how to be better at the business, how to be honest with themselves about what they actually wanted. I didn't push, I just listened, asked more questions, let them find their own answers. Their father announced a major investor meeting in July. He wanted the whole family there, his children, his wife. "We're going to talk about succession planning," he said in the office, his voice full of pride, "about the future of this company, my legacy." His daughter looked at me after the meeting. Her face was pale. "You okay?" I asked. "I don't think I can do this anymore." "Do what?" "Pretend. Pretend I want this. Pretend I'm good at this. Pretend I'm the person he thinks I am. So stop pretending. It's not that simple." "Why not?" She didn't have an answer. 2 weeks later, his son called me. "My sister and I have been talking about what we actually want, about whether we owe him our entire lives just because he's our father." "What did you decide?" "That we don't. We don't owe him that. So what are you going to do?" "Something that's probably going to break his heart." I didn't ask what. I just said, sometimes people's hearts need to break before they can see clearly. The investor meeting was scheduled for August 15th. I wasn't invited. I was just the employee who brought in the clients, not family. But his wife decided to turn it into a dinner party, celebrate the future. She spent weeks planning it, catering, decorations. She invited 30 people, family, close business associates, people who mattered. His daughter told me about it 2 days before. We were having coffee. Her hands were shaking. "We're going to tell him at the dinner," she said. "Both of us, together." "Tell him what?" "That we're not taking over, that we're leaving." My heart was beating hard. I kept my voice calm. "You sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." The dinner party was on a Saturday. I wasn't there, but his daughter called me the next morning. Her voice was shaking, but not from fear, from relief. "We did it," she said. "We told everyone, in front of everyone." "What happened?" He tried to laugh at first, like we were joking. Then he got angry, really angry. Started yelling about how ungrateful we were, how he'd built everything for us. My brother just stood there, calm, and he said, "You built it for yourself, Dad. You just wanted us to be the proof that you'd won." "What did your father say?" "Nothing." He just stared at him. Then he turned to me, asked if I agreed. I told him I'd enrolled in graduate school, social work, starting in January, that I wanted to do something meaningful, something that was mine. And he begged, actually begged us to reconsider, said we were throwing away everything he'd worked for. My mom just sat there, watching him. She looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time, like she'd suspected something for years but never let herself believe it. "How do you feel?" "Terrified. Free. Both." Her brother left for his new job 3 weeks later, a junior position at a nonprofit that worked with at-risk youth, starting from the bottom, learning from scratch. He called me before he left. "Thank you," he said, "for helping me see that I could choose something different. I didn't do anything. You showed me what real work looks like, what it means to earn something. That's everything." His daughter started grad school in January. She texted me photos of her first day. She looked younger, lighter, happy in a way I'd never seen her. Their father called me the Monday after the dinner party. His voice was different, smaller, uncertain. "Did you know about this?" he asked. "Did they talk to you?" "They asked me questions." I answered honestly. "What did you tell them?" "That they had choices, that their lives belonged to them." "You had no right." "I had every right," they asked. I answered, "That's all." He hung up. The business started struggling almost immediately. Clients would call asking for me specifically. I'd take their calls during business hours, do exactly what was required, no more, no less. When they asked if I could take on additional work, I'd say, "You'd need to discuss expanded scope with my supervisor." My boss couldn't fire me. Firing me meant losing the clients who still trusted me, but he couldn't make me care anymore either. I'd shown him exactly what I was worth, and he'd shown me exactly how little that mattered to him. So now I do my job, I collect my paycheck, and I watch him struggle with what he created. His children don't call him much anymore. His daughter told me her mom has started asking questions about the business, about his treatment of employees over the years, about whether the man she married is the man she thought he was. His son is thriving in his new life, actually thriving, building something real, earning respect from people who don't care about his last name. And every single day, my boss has to wake up and face what he lost. Not money, not the business, though that's suffering. He lost the thing he wanted most. His legacy, his proof that he mattered. His children were supposed to carry his name forward, validate everything he'd built, show the world that he'd won. Instead, they walked away. Chose meaning over money, chose authenticity over inheritance. And they did it in front of everyone who mattered to him, in front of his wife, his friends, his associates. He thought his power made him untouchable. He thought his children would always choose him because he'd given them everything. But money can't buy respect. It can't buy genuine love. And it definitely can't buy meaning. I didn't destroy his business. I didn't expose him or ruin him publicly. I just gave his children something he never could. I helped them see that they had permission to choose themselves, to build their own lives, to walk away from a story someone else had written for them. And they chose to walk away from him. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't destruction. It's illumination, helping people see clearly, helping them understand they're not trapped, that they have choices. He gave his children $340,000 in bonuses for work they didn't do. I gave them something worth infinitely more. I gave them themselves back. If you stayed with me through all of this, thank you. Really. Tell me in the comments what you would have done if someone dismissed your work like that. Would you have stayed? Would you have left? Would you have done something different? And if you want to hear more stories about people who found their own kind of justice, you know what to do. Like this. Share it, subscribe, because sometimes the best stories are the ones where nobody has to lose everything for the truth to finally matter. The metrics speak for themselves, Iris, Tucker said, leaning back in his chair with manufactured casualness. 3 clients have expressed concerns about your communication style. I sat perfectly still across from him in the glass-walled conference room where he'd summoned me without warning. My presentation materials for our biggest account lay forgotten on the table between us. Which clients? I asked, keeping my voice level despite the heat crawling up my neck. Tucker smiled that particular smile, the one that transforms his boyish face into something harder. That's confidential feedback, but the pattern is clear. You bite back too much in meetings. You challenge ideas too aggressively. You make people uncomfortable. The accusations stung with precision. After 4 years as the lead strategic analyst at this firm, after single-handedly saving the Reynolds account and tripling our healthcare portfolio, this was apparently my crime, refusing to package truth in pretty wrapping paper. I've never received this feedback directly, I said, thinking of the thank you notes in my desk drawer from those same clients. In fact, Westman Technologies specifically requested me for their project because of my directness. Tucker slid a printed document across the polished surface. This is a performance improvement plan. You'll need to demonstrate significant change in how you interact during meetings. More specifically, when clients or leadership present ideas, your role is to support, not criticize. The subtext was clear. Sit pretty, nod, smile. I scanned the document, my vision narrowing to a tunnel as I read the bullet points. Minimize confrontational language. Avoid challenging senior stakeholders directly. Demonstrate greater team alignment. I noticed this was drafted 2 weeks ago, I said, pointing to the date stamp, before the Henderson pitch where you presented my strategy as your own. Tucker's expression didn't change, but his knuckles whitened around his pen. This isn't personal, Iris. It's business. Your technical skills are excellent, but your attitude is becoming a liability. A liability to whom? I pressed, the question hanging between us. To the company, he replied smoothly. To the team culture I'm trying to build. The team culture where men like Pierce and Damon were assertive while I was aggressive, where they were strategic while I was calculating, where Tucker could claim my work without attribution because clients responded better to his delivery style. I've removed you from tomorrow's presentation to Keller Industries, he continued, clicking his pen rhythmically. Pierce will handle it, and I'm reassigning the Westman project to Andrea. The air seemed to vanish from the room. 4 months of research, strategy development, and testing, my work, handed to junior analysts who wouldn't understand the nuanced data relationships I'd uncovered. Those are my projects, I said, voice barely audible. They're company projects, Tucker corrected. And I decide who represents us to clients. I thought of the Keller Industries presentation waiting on my laptop. the one containing evidence that their current manufacturing approach would fail catastrophically under specific conditions. The analysis Tucker had dismissed as unnecessarily alarming when I'd shared it privately last week. The Keller presentation includes critical safety warnings they need to hear, I said. Pierce doesn't understand the underlying calculations. Pierce will stick to the approved content, Tucker replied, standing to signal our meeting was over. That's what makes him valuable. He delivers what's expected without making waves. I remained seated, the implications crashing over me. This wasn't about my communication style. This was about silencing information Tucker found inconvenient. One more thing, he added, pausing at the door. All client communication goes through me from now on. No direct emails, no calls. Consider it part of your improvement plan. The door closed behind him, leaving me alone with the PIP and the sickening realization that my career at this firm had just been effectively terminated, not with a firing, but with a slow, calculated suffocation. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a hidden folder. Inside were 47 client testimonials I'd been saving for my annual review, 12 industry awards our team had won based on my strategies, and most importantly, the acquisition offer I'd received last month from our biggest competitor. Tucker had made a critical miscalculation. He thought I was fighting to be heard. I was way past that. If you're following this story, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, what happens next is going to make you question everything you think you know about professional feedback. Comment below if you've ever been told to tone yourself down at work. I want to hear your stories while I comment. Share how I transformed mine. My name is Iris Lawton, and until that meeting, I'd been the quiet powerhouse behind 4 years of record growth at Premier Strategy Group. Not that anyone outside our client base would know it. My work appeared in industry journals under other people's names. My strategies were presented by men with deeper voices and broader shoulders. My discoveries were softened, sanitized, and stripped of my fingerprints before they reached executive boardrooms. I hadn't always been this invisible. I started at Premier fresh out of graduate school with my dual masters in data science and business strategy. Back then, the company was struggling, a boutique firm competing against giants. What we lacked in size, we made up for in innovation. That was the official line, anyway. The truth was messier. The innovation came from desperate analysts working 80-hour weeks to keep the lights on. I was one of them, sleeping under my desk some nights, subsisting on protein bars and determination. 6 months in, I spotted a pattern in our client data that everyone else had missed. A tiny behavioral signal that, when properly leveraged, could double conversion rates across all sectors. I compiled my findings, created a comprehensive implementation strategy, and presented it at the weekly team meeting. The room fell silent when I finished. Then Tucker, who'd been with the company just 2 years longer than me, asked a single question. Did you validate this against historical data? 3 years worth, I replied, sliding the supplemental analysis across the table. The pattern holds across all client categories. It's statistically significant at p less than 0.001. Tucker studied the numbers, his expression unreadable. Then he looked up with newfound respect. Good work, Iris. Really good. Let me refine this a bit and take it upstairs. I didn't understand what refine meant until 2 weeks later, when the CEO announced a revolutionary new approach to client engagement developed by Tucker Hamilton, our rising star. The strategy was mine, verbatim, down to the implementation timeline I'd created. I should have left then. That's what I tell myself now. But instead, I convinced myself it was a fluke, a misunderstanding, perhaps even necessary politics I didn't yet understand. Over the next 3 years, it happened again and again. My work became the foundation of Tucker's meteoric rise to management. With each promotion, he brought me along just enough to keep me producing, but never enough to threaten his position. I became the secret weapon he deployed when accounts were failing, the problem solver summoned for impossible challenges, then hidden away when clients arrived. I stayed because the work itself was meaningful. I stayed because each successful project meant a client company thrived, jobs were saved, and sometimes, like with the healthcare clients, lives improved. I stayed because I told myself that impact mattered more than recognition. Until Tucker's latest promotion to Director of Client Strategy 8 months ago, that's when everything changed. Suddenly, my direct access to information was restricted. My communication with clients became inappropriate. My data-driven warnings about flawed approaches became unnecessarily negative. The pattern was clear in retrospect. Tucker had needed my capabilities when we were peers. As my superior, he needed my silence. The Keller Industries presentation was the breaking point. Their new manufacturing process contained a fundamental flaw that my models predicted would cause catastrophic failure within 18 months. When I brought this to Tucker's attention privately, showing him the simulations and risk assessments, he dismissed it outright. "These are theoretical edge cases," he said, barely glancing at my analysis. "Raising these concerns will just make them nervous about working with us." "These aren't edge cases," I insisted. "Under normal operating conditions, their system will fail. People could get hurt." Tucker's expression had hardened then, in a way I should have recognized as dangerous. "Your job is to help them optimize their business, not play safety inspector. I've made the decision. We're proceeding with the positive assessment." Now, sitting alone in the conference room with my career effectively ended, I realized what I should have seen long ago. This wasn't about communication styles or client relationships. This was about power, and what happens when truth threatens it. I gathered my materials slowly, my mind racing ahead to the Keller presentation tomorrow. If Pierce delivered Tucker's sanitized version, Keller would proceed with a fundamentally flawed manufacturing process. The resulting product failures would damage more than their bottom line. They could harm actual people. I couldn't let that happen. Not for my career, not for Tucker, not even for Premier. But direct intervention was now impossible. Tucker had cut off all my official channels. No client contact, no presentation role, no voice in the room. Which meant I needed to find an unofficial channel, one that couldn't be traced back to me until it was too late for Tucker to interfere. I slipped my phone back into my pocket, the folder of testimonials and evidence suddenly feeling like more than just professional validation. It was ammunition, and I finally knew exactly how to use it. I left the conference room and headed straight to my desk. My movements deliberate, unhurried. Anyone watching would see a woman calmly returning to work after a routine meeting. No one would notice my racing pulse or the calculations already forming in my mind. My cubicle sat in the corner of the open floor plan, partially hidden by a structural column, a location I'd once resented but now appreciated for its privacy. I slipped into my chair and turned to my computer, angling the screen away from passing eyes. The Keller Industries presentation was scheduled for 10 a.m. tomorrow. Pierce would be delivering Tucker's sanitized version that omitted my critical findings about their manufacturing process. I had less than 24 hours to ensure the truth reached the right people without destroying my own career in the process. Rough meeting? I looked up to find Margot from HR standing beside my desk, her expression sympathetic. Margot had been with Premier since the beginning, outlasting 3 CEOs and countless reorganizations. Nothing happened at the company without her knowing. Just the usual strategy discussion, I lied, forcing a smile. Margot's eyes flicked to the PIP peeking out from my folder. Looks more serious than that. I hesitated, weighing my options. Margot wasn't just HR, she was the institutional memory of Premier. She had seen careers rise and fall, had witnessed the transformation from struggling startup to industry player. "Tucker thinks I'm too direct in meetings," I said finally. "Apparently clients have complained." "Which clients?" Margot asked, echoing my earlier question to Tucker. "That's confidential, apparently." Margot's lips thinned. "I see." Something in her tone made me look closer. There was knowledge there, and perhaps an ally. "Have others received similar feedback?" I asked carefully. "I'm not at liberty to discuss personnel matters," she replied, the company line delivered with perfect professionalism. Then more quietly, "But my door is always open if you want to talk about documentation strategies for your own records." She placed a sticky note on my desk with her personal cell number before walking away, leaving me with the distinct impression that Margot knew exactly what was happening and had seen it before. I turned back to my computer and began typing rapidly, ignoring the emails flooding my inbox. Instead, I opened a secure cloud drive I'd created months ago, a habit born from watching too many colleagues lose access to critical files during hasty exits. The complete Keller analysis was there, along with my simulation models showing exactly how and when their manufacturing process would fail. I'd built these models nights and weekends, going far beyond what Premier had asked for because I couldn't stomach the thought of missed warning signs. Now, I needed to get this information to Keller without Tucker realizing I was the source. Direct contact was impossible. All client communications were monitored, and Tucker had explicitly banned me from reaching out. I needed a trusted intermediary, someone with direct access to Keller's decision-makers who wouldn't immediately report back to Tucker. My thoughts turned to Bennett Shaw, Keller's chief safety officer. We'd spoken exactly once, 6 months ago, when he'd called with questions about some preliminary data I'd included in an early report. Tucker had been furious that Bennett had my contact information, but the conversation had been illuminating. Bennett was meticulous, ethical, and deeply concerned about potential risks. If anyone at Keller would understand the significance of my findings, it would be Bennett. But how to reach him without using company channels? A memory surfaced, Bennett mentioning an industry conference he chaired annually. A quick search confirmed the Safety Innovation Summit was happening this week at the downtown convention center. Today was the opening reception. I checked the time, 4:17 p.m. The reception started at 6. I began gathering my things, moving with practiced efficiency. As I slipped my laptop into my bag, Damon from the analytics team appeared, leaning against my cubicle wall with his characteristic smirk. Leaving early? That's not like you, Iris the Tireless. Damon had joined Premiere 8 months ago, recruited directly by Tucker. He had half my experience, but twice my confidence, a combination that had quickly made him Tucker's favorite. Doctor's appointment, I said, not bothering to elaborate. Too bad. Tucker wants everyone here late tonight, prepping for the Keller presentation. Said it's all hands on deck. His expression suggested he knew perfectly well I'd been removed from the project. Pierce is nervous about stepping in last minute, almost like he doesn't fully understand the material. I'm sure you'll manage, I replied, slinging my bag over my shoulder. After all, Tucker says the technical details aren't what's important. It's the delivery that matters. Damon's smirk faltered slightly. You know how it is. Some people just present better. Some people just get presented better opportunities. I countered, stepping past him. Give Pierce my notes from the shared drive if he's struggling. The password is attribution matters. I felt Damon's eyes on my back as I walked away, but I didn't turn around. Let him report to Tucker that I was leaving early. By tomorrow, it wouldn't matter. The Safety Innovation Summit was being held at the Grand Plaza Hotel, a gleaming glass structure in the heart of downtown. I arrived just as attendees were beginning to filter into the reception hall, their name tags identifying them as safety officers, quality assurance directors, and risk management specialists from across the manufacturing sector. I scanned the room for Bennett, rehearsing what I would say when I found him. This wasn't just career suicide. It potentially violated my non-disclosure agreement, but the alternative was allowing a fundamentally unsafe product to reach consumers. Looking for someone? I turned to find a woman in her 60s observing me with sharp intelligence. Her name tag identified her as Dr. Helena Reed, keynote speaker. Bennett Shaw, I admitted, from Keller Industries. Ben stepped out to take a call. He should be back shortly. She studied me more closely. You're not registered for the conference. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. No. I need to speak with him about a safety concern that's being presented to his company tomorrow. It's time sensitive. Dr. Reed's expression remained neutral, but something in her posture changed. Safety concerns should never be filtered for convenience. That's how disasters happen. Exactly, I said, relieved at her understanding. There he is. She nodded toward the entrance where Bennett had appeared, phone still pressed to his ear. I'll introduce you. 5 minutes later, I was seated in a quiet corner of the hotel bar with Bennett Shaw, my laptop open between us. This wasn't in the materials Tucker sent over for tomorrow's meeting, Bennett said, frowning as he studied my simulation. It was removed, I replied carefully. Tucker felt it was unnecessarily alarmist. Bennett's frown deepened. These failure points occur under standard operating conditions. This isn't alarmist, it's basic safety protocol. That was my assessment as well. Why are you showing me this now, outside official channels? I met his gaze directly. Because I've been removed from the project and banned from client contact. The presentation you'll see tomorrow omits this data entirely. Bennett was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he asked, What do you want from Keller, Miss Lawton? I don't want anything except for you to have the complete information before making decisions that affect people's safety. What you do with this data is entirely up to you. This could damage your career, he observed. My career was damaged the moment I prioritized accuracy over politics, I replied. But I can find another job. The people who might be harmed by a faulty product can't find another life. Bennett closed my laptop gently. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I'll need to discuss this with our executive team tonight. I understand. As I gathered my things, Bennett added, For what it's worth, this is exactly the kind of ethical standpoint we value at Keller. Not everyone would take this risk. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The validation shouldn't have mattered. I'd done this for the principal, not the praise. But after months of being undermined and silenced, Bennett's simple acknowledgement felt monumental. I returned home to my apartment, the tension of the day settling into my muscles as I unlocked the door. The space was small but deliberately organized, books arranged by subject, kitchen tools hung in perfect alignment, work materials filed in labeled containers, control where I could find it. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Tucker called emergency meeting. Team working all night on revised Keller presentation, you mentioned. Not positively. Margot, I realized. Already looking out for me. I texted back, thank you. So Tucker knew something was happening. Perhaps Damon had reported our conversation, or maybe Tucker's instinct for self-preservation had been triggered. Either way, he was moving to counter a threat he couldn't yet identify. What would he do? Likely prepare Pierce for potential questions about the safety data. Perhaps reach out to Keller executives to preemptively discredit any concerns. Definitely ensure I had no access to the building or systems before tomorrow's presentation. I checked my company email on my phone and confirmed my suspicion. Access denied. That was fast, even for Tucker. My computer credentials would be next. I opened my personal laptop and connected to the secure cloud drive, grateful for my paranoid contingency planning. Everything important was already backed up, safely beyond Tucker's reach. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Margot. Security directive issued. Your access suspended pending review. Officially, for system maintenance. So Tucker was cutting off all my avenues of intervention. Standard procedure when eliminating a threat. What he didn't understand was that I'd never planned to fight this battle on his terms. The information was already with Bennett. The choice to act on it belonged to Keller now. I sent one final text to Margot. I'll be in tomorrow as usual. Then I closed my laptop and prepared for bed with the same methodical precision I applied to everything. Tomorrow would bring either vindication or termination. Either way, I would face it with dignity. Morning arrived with cruel brightness, sunlight streaming through my bedroom window as my alarm chimed. I dressed with care, selecting a charcoal gray suit that projected confidence without demanding attention. My armor for the day ahead. The premier office was already buzzing when I arrived, the energy electric with pre-presentation nerves. I badged in without issue. Apparently Tucker hadn't thought to revoke my physical access, and made my way to my desk as though nothing had changed. Heads turned as I passed. Whispers followed. Word had spread about my removal from the Keller project, perhaps even about my PIP. In a company this size, secrets lasted hours, not days. Tucker emerged from his office the moment I sat down, his expression thunderous. Iris, a word. I followed him into the same conference room where he delivered his feedback yesterday, noting the tightness around his eyes, the barely contained fury in his movements. You've been busy, he said as soon as the door closed. I don't know what you mean, I replied calmly. Keller called at midnight. They want the presentation delayed. They've suddenly developed concerns about our analysis methodology. Tucker leaned forward. What did you do? Nothing that violates company policy, I said, which was technically true. I hadn't used company resources or disclosed proprietary information, only my own analysis of publicly available manufacturing specifications. You contacted them directly after I explicitly forbade it. I don't have contact information for anyone at Keller, I replied. Another technical truth. Bennett had been at a public conference. Tucker studied me, searching for the lie. The presentation is still happening. Pierce has been prepped for any safety questions. Whatever you're trying to accomplish won't work. I'm not trying to accomplish anything except ensuring Keller has accurate information for their decision-making. That's not your call to make. Tucker's composure cracked, his voice rising. You work for this company. For me, your job is to deliver what I approve, not undermine strategy because you think you know better. I met his gaze steadily. My job is to provide accurate analysis that serves our clients' best interests. That's what builds lasting relationships, not hiding critical information to avoid difficult conversations. Tucker's laugh was bitter. You still don't get it. This isn't about accuracy. It's about business. Clients don't pay us to tell them their baby is ugly. They pay us to tell them how to dress it up. Keller isn't paying us to evaluate their baby's appearance. They're paying us to ensure their manufacturing process won't create products that harm people. The conference room door opened before Tucker could respond. Andrea, his assistant, appeared with panic in her eyes. They're here, she said. All of them. Who's here? Tucker demanded. Keller. Not just the project team, their entire executive leadership, CEO, CFO, Chief Safety Officer. They're all in the main conference room, and they're asking for Iris. Tucker's face drained of color. Why would they ask for Iris? Andrea shook her head. They wouldn't say, but the CEO looked serious, and they brought their legal counsel. Tucker straightened his tie, the gears visibly turning behind his eyes. Tell them I'll be right there with the project lead. They specifically asked for Iris, Andrea repeated, by name. Tucker's gaze snapped to me, accusation written in every line of his face. What did you tell them? The truth, I said simply. The walk to the main conference room felt like a dream sequence, time stretching and compressing in strange measures. Tucker strode ahead, already crafting damage control strategies. I followed at my own pace, strangely calm. Whatever happened next, I had done what was right. The conference room fell silent as we entered. Seated around the massive table were 9 people I recognized from the Keller organizational chart, including Bennett Shaw, who gave me a slight nod. At the head of the table sat Gregory Keller himself, the founder and CEO whose reputation for exacting standards was legendary in the industry. His silver hair and keen eyes gave him the appearance of a hawk watching potential prey. Mr. Hamilton, Gregory acknowledged Tucker with cool professionalism. And you must be Iris Lawton. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral, despite the tension crackling through the room. Please, both of you sit down, Gregory continued. We have much to discuss. Tucker immediately launched into his prepared speech. Mr. Keller, I understand you have concerns about our methodology. I want to assure you that Premier Strategy Group stands behind our analysis 100%. If there's been any confusion, Gregory raised a hand, cutting him off. Mr. Hamilton, I'm not here to discuss methodology. I'm here because last night, our Chief Safety Officer received information suggesting your firm deliberately withheld critical safety data from our team. Tucker's smile never faltered, though his knuckles whitened where they gripped the armrest. There must be some misunderstanding. All relevant data was included in our reports. That's not true, Bennett said quietly, and I believe Miss Lawton can confirm that. All eyes turned to me. This was the moment Tucker had been dreading, the confrontation he'd worked so hard to prevent. I could feel his silent warning like a physical pressure, but I met Bennett's gaze directly. The presentation scheduled for today omits simulation data showing critical failure points in the proposed manufacturing process, I said. These failures would occur under standard operating conditions within 18 months of implementation. Tucker interjected. What Miss Lawton is referring to are theoretical edge cases that, they're not theoretical, I continued, my voice stronger now. They're statistically inevitable outcomes based on materials, stress analysis, and environmental factors. I identified these issues 3 weeks ago and brought them to Mr. Hamilton's attention immediately. And what was his response? Gregory asked. He said that raising these concerns would make Keller nervous about working with Premier. He instructed me to remove this data from the final presentation. Tucker's face flushed with anger. That is a complete mischaracterization of our conversation. Is it? I reached into my bag and removed a small digital recorder. Because I have the audio. The room went absolutely still. Tucker stared at the recorder as if it were a venomous snake. That's a violation of company policy, he said, voice barely audible. Actually, it's not. I met his gaze steadily. Premier's Employee Handbook, Section 11.3, states that employees may record conversations they participate in if they believe unethical practices are being discussed. I believed your instruction to withhold safety data qualified. I placed the recorder on the table. Of course, this recording only captures our most recent conversation. It doesn't include the 3 separate emails where I outline these concerns, or the meeting notes documenting your dismissal of them. Those are all available as well. Gregory Keller leaned forward. Miss Lawton, are you telling us that you have documentation proving your firm intentionally concealed safety issues that could have resulted in product failures? Yes, I replied. And I'm prepared to provide all of it to your team. That won't be necessary, a new voice said from the doorway. We all turned to see Elaine Morris, Premier's CEO, standing there with Margot from HR beside her. Elaine's expression was granite as she surveyed the scene. Mr. Keller, on behalf of Premier Strategy Group, I want to apologize for this situation. It appears there has been a serious breach of our ethical standards. She turned to Tucker. Mr. Hamilton, please go with Margot to clear out your office. Tucker half rose from his chair. Elaine, you can't possibly. I've heard the recording, Tucker. Margot brought it to my attention an hour ago, along with Miss Lawton's other documentation. Your employment is terminated, effective immediately. As Tucker was escorted out, his final glare promised retribution. I watched him go, feeling neither triumph nor satisfaction, only a profound relief that truth had prevailed. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of technical discussions. I walked the Keller team through my complete analysis, answering questions and outlining potential modifications that would address the safety issues without requiring a complete redesign. By the time we finished, Gregory Keller was nodding with approval. This is exactly the kind of thoroughness we expected when we hired Premier. I'm grateful you had the integrity to ensure we received it, Miss Lawton. After the Keller team departed, Elaine asked me to join her in her office. I prepared myself for the worst. Even with Tucker gone, I had still gone outside proper channels. Sit down, Iris, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. I owe you an apology. That was unexpected. Ma'am, Margot has been collecting complaints about Tucker for months, but without concrete evidence, our hands were tied. Your documentation changed that. She studied me with new respect, though I wish you had come to me directly. I tried, I admitted. 3 times. Your assistant said you were unavailable. Elaine sighed. Another thing to fix. We've grown too hierarchical, too siloed. When good information can't reach decision makers, bad decisions become inevitable. She pushed a folder across the desk. I opened it cautiously, expecting another pip. Instead, I found a promotion letter with my name on it. Director of Client Strategy. I read aloud. Effective immediately. We need someone who values truth over convenience, Elaine said. Someone who understands that our real value to clients isn't telling them what they want to hear, it's telling them what they need to know, even when it's difficult. What about the team? Tucker built quite a following. Some will adapt, others won't. That's your challenge now. Elaine leaned forward. But first, there's the matter of the acquisition offer you received last month. I startled. How did you? Margot is very thorough, Elaine said with the ghost of a smile. I'd like you to decline it. Premier needs your voice, Iris. Not silenced or softened, but clear and direct. Will you stay? 3 weeks later, I stood in the newly remodeled strategy department. The glass walls had been replaced with an open, collaborative space. The hierarchy that had protected Tucker's behavior had been flattened. Every analyst now had direct contact with clients, with proper oversight, but without gatekeepers. The Keller project proceeded with my safety modifications fully implemented. 3 other clients requested similar reviews of their processes, creating a new service line that quickly became our fastest-growing revenue stream. Tucker found a position at a competing firm, where he reportedly described me as vindictive and calculating. Perhaps I was, but I had never planned an elaborate revenge or plotted his downfall. I had simply done what he never expected. I had kept records. I had built relationships. I had trusted that truth, properly documented, would speak for itself. The ultimate revenge wasn't destroying Tucker's career. It was creating a workplace where people like him couldn't thrive, while people like me couldn't be silenced. In the end, I didn't need to bite back. I just needed to show my teeth. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment about a time when speaking up felt risky but necessary. I read every single one. The workplace only changes when we refuse to accept that feedback is just another word for silence. Sometimes the most powerful response isn't fighting back, it's standing your ground and letting truth do the heavy lifting.